First of all, welcome. We are here tonight to celebrate our newest Fast Track Fellows, Alan Ma Baxter and Justine Rivero. Alan cannot be with us tonight, other family obligations, so you're not going to hear his pitch, but we are still celebrating him. And Justine is in the UK, so her pitch tonight will be on video, but we are celebrating both of them. We're also celebrating our newest diversity initiative selections, which is, and I'm going to butcher these last names, so just bear with me. Jennifer Giacalone, Lindsay Kamikawa, and Stephanie Neroes. I hope I got all of those correct. You can correct me in the chat if I didn't, or when you come up to pitch. We're excited to welcome them all to the ISA development slate also, and begin working with them as we move forward. If you didn't know already, our Fast Track Fellowship fall season is currently open and accepting applications. The 2 fellows that are selected for each Fast Track week are set up with general meetings all week, work with Felicity and myself, and are accepted onto the ISA development slate, where we work with them for at least a year on their craft and prepping themselves out in the industry. Also, there are some exciting updates on the ISA website. You can now share your profile and materials via email and socials. So make sure that you're building your profile with your picture, bio, all your screenplays. Make sure your log lines are up to date. And if they're not working, rewrite them. Make sure you have your awards, success stories, and then you can click the share button next to your profile pic and select what you want to share and where you want to share it. So it's a great way. If you don't have your own website, voila, now you do. Now you can share your profile with whoever you want. And tonight we are here talking about pitching. So one of the features and not programs, I guess one of the things that we provide is we work with writers primarily on our development slate, but we also help writers everywhere on the site to work on their pitches. And if you are interested in any help with your pitch, you can come work with me on your pitch, and we're offering $10 off those pitch practices. You just need to use pitch practice as the code. So if you're inspired tonight and want to work on your pitch, you can do your 90-second pitch, you can do a 10-minute pitch, whatever you want to work on, we're here for you. Okay, now we got through that. Let's move on to why we are here tonight. We are hearing some amazing pitches, and I would like to introduce our panelists tonight. First up, we have Rachael Shapiro. She's the former programmer, that's a mouthful, for Laughs ComedyPRO. We also have Paul Lindsay, who is a director and producer and currently in the desert on a shoot, and he was so lovely to join us this evening. And also we have Felicity Wren, who is our VP of Development at ISA and also a producer herself. Thank all of you for being here with us tonight. We're excited. I just want to go around a little bit and hear from each of you about your experience in pitching, or if you are somebody who pitches a lot, and so that's where your expertise comes from. If you're hearing pitches, where are you at in the world of pitching, and any, words of wisdom that you've learned over the years? And I will start with, let's start with Felicity. You can get it rolling.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you if you're here now. You are excellent. Thank you if you're watching in the future. You are still excellent. I will just say as well that Shayna is incredible at pitch practices. She can't say that because it'd be weird saying that about herself, but she has a really great success record. And she's wonderful to work with, and she's kind and thoughtful and comes up with really good ideas. So if you need a pitch practice, Shayna is your girl, woman, human being. Anyway, yeah, look at the hearts. I love it. I love it. So I guess I hear pitches on different levels because I am VP of Development for Creative Screenwriter Productions, as well as my own production company, as well as working with the development slate. So there are times when I'm working with writers at the ISA and they're getting ready to be part of the Fast Track Fellowship, for example. And we kind of talk them through how they're going to speak about their own personal journey, their own kind of the history of who they are as a writer, why they write, the things they're trying to talk about with their voice, the the things they want to touch, the themes that are important to them. So we kind of work on their own personal story, and that is a pitch in itself. And then we also talk about the pitches for the shows that they have, the screenplays that they have. So it's a mix of the two. But I have also been in with other people when they're pitching, when I introduce them and say, you should know this writer. And that's awkward too, because I speak about them again in the third person and say, they're incredible. You should love their story. So I've been on a few different sides of it. I love it. I think it's but it's so scary, you know, even right now, as I talk to you, and really there's no pressure on me to get it right. I still feel the anxiety. So I understand how it's terrifying, but actually it's a chance for you to perform. It's a chance for you to actually tell your story. It's a chance for you to talk about all the interesting things you've done in your life, and to convince someone else that maybe they should hear more about what you do and who you are, and about the characters in your story, because you might have something that's going to teach them or teach the world something that they need to know.
Awesome. Thank you. Rachel, I'm going to go to you next.
My perspective comes from a little bit of a different side, in that I don't hear pitches in order to produce something or go in and pitch things myself. But, you know, Just for Laughs, a big comedy was sadly a big comedy festival for 40 something years. And the Comedy Pro, which was the industry programming side of it, was very, you know, heavily, it was all about primarily comedy writers and also comics, performers, sketch, people from the world of comedy, but different backgrounds. So not all traditional writers coming in and pitching their ideas to panels like this. So my perspective was always, on the one hand, reading and then hearing lots and lots of pitches for the purpose of including them in the programming. At the same time, when people were finalists, you know, we had, this is, you know, 15 years going, and we had lots of panelists. And so it was also hearing their perspectives on what they wanted to hear. The only thing I would say that was really specifically different, obviously, than when you go into an office at a network, is it's a little different when you have 5 minutes on stage in front of a room full of people, and you're not speaking to one network, you're speaking to 5 or 6 networks, right? So that the context of that kind of pitching is different. But
pressure.
you know, I think, you know, certainly much of what you know, much of what I you know, I what was advising people or coaching people, and also hearing from our panelists, who are all network and streaming executives, you know, are the kinds of feedback that I would be giving on this panel. So.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing some of your feedback when we hear the pitches. And Paul, I'll go to you. I love your hat. Paul's out in the desert, so love the hat. Can you talk a little bit about your perspective on pitching?
I've done my fair share of pitching, and I would call them impromptu pitches all the time, because in being what I do, people come up and say, "Hey, I have an idea," and I just say, "Listen, I've been in the business for 20 years, so you have people who are both experienced and inexperienced, and you kind of had an idea of what sounds good, what has marketability, and what has viability, there's a difference between a show that would be for something like Max and then a show that would be for a Hulu. There's versus network. So, and when I hear that, you can pretty much tell what the vein the people are in, and you always try to coach them along, and be like, you know, when you're pitching, you're speed dating, and earlier, you know, I want you to like me enough to hear what I have to say more, and then court me and date me and woo me, and you know, and that's really what pitching is. And so to be compelling to somebody that you may not even know, or you may think they're your type, but then you find out that they are, and that to me is what I've seen. And then they might like you for you didn't even expect it, like, oh wow, because it resonated with them.
Yeah, that's such a great analogy. Now I'm forever going to think about speed dating as I go in, like, hi, like me. I mean, that is how you feel, like me enough to do it again. Okay, so I do want to ask, and maybe Paul, you're the person that I can ask this. How do you think pitching has evolved or changed over the years in terms of Zoom coming in to be the, place for a majority of meetings, but also with pitch decks. Are you finding that people are pitching less because they can provide a pitch deck, or is it still the same? Are pitches getting shorter? Are they getting longer? What's your perspective on that?
I think pitching has evolved with the advent of Zooms and pitch deck apps, where you can, in essence, create a world with music and tones and everything. And I saw a pitch deck that it resembled the page turn of a Marvel comic at the beginning of the movie. And in terms of the transitions, I was like, that's brilliant, because it sets you for that tone. You're like, I'm in this world right now. I'm really in the world. Other decks I've seen were stark, almost like graphic novels with and some just have like the lookbooks, and it really shows the creativity of the person pitching, or the group pitching. So because sometimes you have a group now, because it's not just one person in the room, but it's, if you have writing partners, all three can be on the Zoom at one time, and the person being pitched doesn't feel overwhelmed with a number of people all in their space.
Felicity, I'll go to you about this one too. When you're working with somebody pitching, getting ready to go to network, or to an agent or a manager or wherever, we lost Paul for a second. How long are the standard pitches now, and like what lengths should people be prepared to? Like, should you have a 90-second pitch, a 5-minute pitch, a 10-minute pitch? I get asked a lot, like, what's the standard length for if you're going into a actual pitch meeting? Not necessarily a general where you're just talking maybe about your project short, but what's the average length for an actual pitch meeting?
You tend to get 30 minutes in the room, or 30 minutes in the Zoom. So really, you're going to have that first 5 minutes where you mess about a bit and you try and become friends, and you try and not comment on what they've got on the wall behind, or do if it's something interesting, and you can kind of like start a conversation in a nice way. So then you have about, I think, between a 12-minute and a 17-minute window, depending on what you're doing. If it's a series and you've got a lot of episodes that you want to go through, or they're asking you more questions as you're going through, then maybe there needs a bit more room inside that. But I always think you should err on the side of brevity. So if you come in at the kind of like the third, I like the number 13. So I would probably go for number like 13 minutes or something. So people are expecting 15, and you're like, wow, that was quick. And they don't quite realize it's because it was 2 minutes shorter than most of them. And I think it's just that kind of sense of really making sure you've covered all the points you need to cover. However, you should have your 90-second pitch always ready to go. You should definitely have your slightly longer, more involved, I see it living here. I've thought about, my daydreaming cast is this for the lead characters. You should definitely have one of those versions too, just for if you are a networking event, or if there is if after you've done your pitch and they kind of like you and they go like, have you got anything else? Just have something else ready to go. So you're not kind of like, no, that's it. Just the only one, just the one. Because, I think you want to show as well that you are prolific, you know what I mean? And you have lots of good ideas, but also that you've thought about it. You're not just waiting for them to do all the work. Same if you're meeting a manager, sometimes you might have to pitch your work if you're meeting a manager, say it's not for sales. It's the same thing. You are invested in yourself, you're invested in the work, and you're also looking at where your work sits in the market. You know who you are and what your brand is.
Thank you. And Rachael, for you, when you hear pitches, or you hear people talking about their projects informally or formally, what is the thing for you that is the most important aspect of a pitch to take away? Because we all know, you're going to have to take it to somebody else, or, bring it to somebody else to talk about. For you, what's the thing that grabs you? What's the part of it that you hold on to?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, and again, my personal perspective is sort of gleaned from lots and lots of other people's, but the key standout points, in this context of comedy, which is a bit where I'm coming from, was we really have to see the humor. So, whether or not someone's read the script in advance, the pilot script or not, whether they've only seen a pitch deck, whether they've looked at a few online clips, all of that, depending on how prepared the executive is, all of that enters into it. But at the end of the day, if the humor isn't evident in the pitch, if you have to, if you can't, if you have to explain why something is funny, or
Right.
if the person, sitting opposite you, if you can't see a chuckle, or, what I'm saying, that the humor, again, my perspective is a little bit skewed on comedy because but I would say it's probably the same if something is very scary or dramatic or sci-fi.
Yeah, I think your
I
tone
think that
has to match,
the tone,
right?
but
Yeah.
it really has to. That really had to land, because everything else could be talked through in the next 5 or 10 minutes. The question about what happens in season 2 if this character gets divorced, or whatever it is that leads them, that can all
Yeah.
be talked about.
Yeah.
But if you're pitching a comedy, that was the most important thing. And we often had a lot of committees, and
Sure.
you could tell if it landed or if it didn't. So
Right.
that was,
Yeah, I mean, I think that probably resonates across the board in terms of tone. If you're pitching
Right.
horror and no one's like, ooh,
Right, nothing's horrible.
surprised or anything.
Yeah,
then
yeah.
Paul, I'm going to ask you the same thing from your perspective. What for you is the most important aspect of a pitch as a takeaway?
Does the person believe it? Does the
Mm.
person really, really believe it? And like, anyone can see that thing done, but do you believe in this? And I always go back to Rocky, because Sylvester believed in that, like believed in it, like bled it, did everything about it. He believed in that. He believed that it was him. And that, let's say he said, no, it's okay, I like this, but someone else, and you have to have that passion, that undying passion for it. And therefore that will champion your cause. That it has to be, you have to live it.
Yeah.
You have to breathe it. It has to resonate with you in a way that you become its biggest cheerleader, not someone else, or you become the biggest cheerleader to make someone else the biggest cheerleader. But it's that passion that you have to have for it. Absolutely.
I love that answer. I love that idea though, because if you don't come in and you don't bleed it, no one else can take that to the next level either. So I love that. Okay, so I think that we can start getting into our pitches if everyone is ready for that.
You were
Hi,
close. Hey,
Jennifer. Close. What is it?
Giacalone.
Giacalone. Oh, I embellished it a little bit. Giacalone. Jennifer, will you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Oh, you know what? Let me turn off this BS background. It shouldn't be on. Hold on. Sorry.
This is fine to do. If you ever get into a pitch meeting and you don't like something about your setup, or you're going to use the screen, it is fine to stop and say, let me just adjust myself. Don't feel like, do you remember there was that video with the man in the cat face? You know what I mean? That was in the, and he was stuck in the cat filter. I just like, remember that you're a human, they're a human. You can say, can I change this? Like Jennifer did. Hi, Jen, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Man, I quit rock and roll so that I could avoid speaking in front of large crowds.
Right back. We got you right back in there.
I am a multimodal creative with well-managed ADHD. I have a podcast, and I have a deal with a queer publisher in Europe, and I'm writing screenplays in between there, and maybe thinking about starting radio dramas on Twitch. I don't know when I'm gonna do that, but yeah. So that's me. I'm a big nerd with popcorn brain.
All right, sounds good. Whenever you are ready to go ahead.
Okay. So I am talking about the script that I sent you guys, Toccata and Fugue. So basically, a bomb goes off at a classical music recital in London, and the young pianist on stage is traumatized afterwards and unable to play without severe panic attacks. And she unfortunately has a career-making performance at Royal Albert Hall looming in the near future that she refuses to cancel. Lanny is a brilliant, ambitious young musician whose star is rising, despite criticism from some that her flawless playing is stiff or bloodless. She doesn't trust therapy, but she grudgingly agrees to work with a music therapist named Jacinda to fix her panic attacks in time for the show. But Jacinda has been around, and she sees the underlying trauma that Lanny has spent a lifetime ignoring and pushes her to tackle it, because really healing is the only way she's going to be able to play again. And it gets messy. Lanny, poor girl, shags people she shouldn't and punches people she shouldn't and grapples with her identity as a biracial Asian woman in London and grapples with her sexuality or lack of it. And most of all, she struggles with the grief of her mother's suicide, which was the result of undiagnosed bipolar disorder when Lanny was 12. Her mother was a renowned violinist known for incredibly passionate performances, and Lanny has spent her entire life as an artist running from that. Uh, the challenging and sometimes tumultuous therapy relationship drives the story as Jacinda pushes her to not just heal her wounds, but transcend them. And it explores how doing that can make us better artists and better humans.
Thank you, Jennifer. Felicity, I will go to you first.
First of all, congratulations for going first. Always the worst. You know what I mean? You kind of like, you're flung off the deep end. So well done for that. There were moments when you kind of really relaxed and enjoyed it. And they were the bits that were most successful to me when you were talking about her mother and the kind of, and who she was. I wanted to know what it was up front. So just take a moment to go like, I think it was just because you had to talk about yourself first and it's a bit weird, but just to kind of center yourself and say, it's my feature script. This is the name of it. And I am Jennifer. Just like saying your name out loud to the person you're pitching to just grounds you because you remember who you are, and it also helps them to go like, Jennifer, okay, they're in. And also because I know this script has a difficult title, you know what I mean? So it's not one that's going to trip off the tongue. So you need to allow them to kind of understand that. What I liked about it is you then gave us the story and then you told us what drives it and what's kind of like going to happen in it, which I like both those pieces. I just wish there was a bit more of you in it, especially as you are a musician. So a bit of you saying, I was, called to write this story because, you know what I mean? Something that just allowed me to see a tiny bit more of you as a musician, you as someone who is managing kind of your own symptoms of being alive. And why you thought it was important to tell this story. But really well done. Really, really well done.
Thanks.
Excellent. Rachel, we'll go to you.
A couple of the things that I would have said, same thing. I didn't know if it was a TV show, if it was a feature script, if it was a drama. So I think often, it is good to sort of introduce what it is if it's this format. Did you have, was there a time limit that you were supposed to adhere to?
We were told 90 seconds, so.
Oh, okay. So that's great. That's good to know. Obviously, there's, depending on how much time you have in the room, right? If this is a feature, then the pitch is a different scenario than a TV series and, what you're pitching for. Absolutely agree. I think you did a great job of laying out the bones and the structure and the sort of plot and the arc. I think that was terrific. I absolutely understood what happened in the past, what her struggle was, what was going to come of it. I think and again, now that I understand it was only 90 seconds, I totally get it. But I'd love to know, let's say from the person sitting, I would love to know, is it a big ensemble? Is it a large production? Is it a small, intimate, independent film? Is it, it feels character driven because you were able to focus on those characters, but, how much, I'm going to assume that soundtrack heavy, I guess, there are pieces to it, to hearing about a feature film that might benefit to have a little bit longer to cover up on those things. Again, unless I've already received a whole bunch of information, the full treatment in advance, then maybe I know that already. Is it small, intimate, independent? Is it larger ensemble? What's the sort of bigger? I'm just curious how you have that.
I can see it. I envision it kind of on the smaller side. I mean, the world of classical music in London is kind of very much like a textural element of it. But Lanny is the focus. She's in almost pretty much every scene. And we sort of go through, this journey with her of, becoming desperate to shake this problem and not realizing that it has to be, she has to do more than just put a patch on it. So, I mean, really the only big thing is the bombing, which happens in the first 5 minutes, in terms of like effects or anything like that. But it's all pretty character driven. I mean, most scenes there's not more than 3 people that have dialogue ever. I think to answer what I think you probably are actually asking, I think it could be done relatively inexpensively.
I wasn't worried about finance. I was just, I was curious. Okay, that's great.
Okay, thanks. And Paul.
I enjoyed the pitch, and I just wanted to add this. It intrigued me right off the bat because I like to draw parallels to other movies, and it was The Pianist and Ray and Whiplash and Good Will Hunting, all incredible movies that featured had a musicality, or the theme was music and a struggle with that music because of some trauma that happened and the person overcame. And when I was listening to you discuss it, it was almost as if you were overcoming your fear or dislike of talking in public, and then you started to play as you got more comfortable. But when I noticed that, I was smiling. So I'm like, this is what a concerto does. They go and they start to play, and then it becomes, you get to that zone, and because it's there and everything else fades away. You're here right now because you've excuse me, you've learned to do that. Just, there's no fear anymore. Just play.
I love that. Very thoughtful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer, very much. Lindsay is another diversity initiative selection, and she's pitching Daughter of Heaven.
Hello. Hi.
Lindsay, how do we say your last name?
Kamikawa. Yes. It is a Japanese last name, and you did a great job.
I was like, I don't know. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Lindsay Kamikawa. I'm Asian American. I'm half Chinese, half Japanese. I grew up in Orange County, went to UCLA. So much of my journey as a writer is informed by that sort of racial journey of mine, and the impact of media, of course, or the lack thereof. And I would say that, it was when I went to UCLA, I took a class called Asian American Woman. That was the big moment in my life where I realized, oh my God, all of us were realizing we're not crazy. This mythology around our identity is not some random coincidence. It's highly intentional. We've absorbed it. And so all that to say, my mission statement as a writer, it really is just to set people free. And, naturally, I tend to gravitate toward writing about Asian female characters, but more importantly, I love powerful characters, subversive, explosive, things that are kind of antithetical to what you might expect, especially for an Asian woman. So I'm happy to connect that to my pitch itself. It definitely relates. So I'm speaking about my hour-long historical drama pilot, which is called Daughter of Heaven. Daughter of Heaven is the title because Son of Heaven is the term once used to describe the Emperor of China. And, a few years ago, I went to China for the first time. We were touring the Forbidden City, walking through the harem where the concubines lived. And our tour guide said, once upon a time, there was this bloodthirsty, conniving concubine, and she overthrew the imperial court, and she ruled China from behind the throne of her 5-year-old son. She's known as the Dragon Lady, and we hate her. On to the next. And I was like, oh my God, like what just, who is she speaking of? What is this story? How do I not know anything about it? And so I needed to make her life my whole life. I did all this research, and really the story that I latched onto was, tell me how this 24-year-old, sex slave, more or less, in the most patriarchal society imaginable, deemed herself worthy of or entitled to the most powerful seat, the most powerful throne in the world. This is a third of the world's population. How does someone become like that? And, we can even look back and say in hindsight, yes, she was controversial, but she was also brilliant. She was China's first feminist. She abolished foot binding. She got women the right to vote. She modernized China's navy. She opened China up to the Western world. Bringing us to the pilot itself, the moment that I thought we had to start from, which was, the emperor dies, this cruel, fearful emperor in 1861, and he leaves behind 8 very like-minded, super xenophobic men to rule China in his son's place until his 5-year-old son is of age to rule. And Cixi, this very opportunistic, very politically sagacious concubine, sees this window of opportunity because she's bore the emperor's only son. With the help of her best friend, Empress Zen, the other wife of the emperor, they hatched this highly strategic plan to launch a coup on the court and single-handedly eliminate all 8 men. So it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, all of the men. And by the end of the pilot, they're each heading to their death, to their demise at Cixi's hand. But of course, new enemies are on her tail, and the loyalty is wavering between her and her only allies. And she is preparing by herself to basically become the unofficial ruler of China. And so I would say that this show has Game of Thrones stakes, right, and cruelty. But it has, I'd like to think, Killing Eve, flamboyance, and electricity, a very modern sensibility that was very important to me as we're making this, very, not like almost ancient Chinese world come to life. And ultimately, my hope is if art tells us who we are, Cixi tells anyone who has been subjugated that they can be strong, they can be relentless, they can be glorious. And that's the message I hope to impart with it. Thank you very much.
Amazing. I mean, talk about passion. You really had so much passion. So thank you. That was, I mean, I was leaning in. So I'm going to go to Paul first.
Your story was epic. Was absolutely epic and so sweeping, and so the personalization that you put into it, I dug it. I really, really dug it. And can I ask you, did you is this written more as, when you concepted this, was this written more as a feature or as a series?
I see it as a series, a multi-season series, beginning with this kind of pocket in time, but spanning over the decades of her rule as a leader. Yeah.
To me, it had Succession or Billions over it, because it was so rich with intrigue, and yeah, it was I like this. It was fun because it's something that you have not seen before. You really haven't seen before. It's almost like the way how Baz Luhrmann takes Romeo and Juliet and sets it to modern times, or I kind of felt that with this, and so I really, that resonated. So very nice.
Thank you, Paul.
Very welcome.
Thanks, Paul. Felicity, I'll go to you next.
Honestly, you had me at Dragon Lady. The guide said there's Dragon Lady, we hate her, and then moved on. I'm like, oh my God, Dragon Lady. Do you know what I mean? Because also, I guess that's the Game of Thrones reference. But I think that fun beginning, we're like, what? And also because we've all been on those stuffy tours where they do something like that, and it starts. I love the fact that it started this obsession in you that felt very kind of real. I mean, it was a great job. You covered so much. I loved your smooth, seamless, well, let me just talk about these things, and then just lean straight into it and tell you my pitch. You mean, you didn't even wait for permission. You just kind of did that. Love that. You owned the room. There were a couple of other things I really enjoyed, which is I loved the Killing Eve thing, to make it, to have the past and the modern, kind of like those two kind of running together, which really made it feel fantastic. And then when you just said, and then the men all go into dance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I was like, oh my gosh, playing with us, allowing us to, suddenly we were in Shishi, you say is her name? How do you say her name?
Cixi, yeah.
Cixi, in her shoes, kind of like watching her kind of be the, kind of like pick them off. And I felt like you embodied her in that moment of this kind of moment of glee but also finally, I would say it was about the fact you ended it so well. Art tells us who they are. You know what I mean? I just think that last quote, and about the fact that they are willing to change, see her worth, decide that it's not good enough. But then also you also told us that she made such a difference to women in China anyway, which was a great start to it. So now I'm like, oh, wow, she really was a groundbreaking person. Honestly, I don't know if you could have done any better.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Felicity.
You're welcome.
I agree. Rachel.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think you did an amazing job. I will say, I think your confidence is outstanding. I don't know if that's just a lot of practice, who you are. That is really engaging. It makes me on this side feel more comfortable knowing that you are comfortable, to be honest, So that really stood out. and factually, I have to say, I very much responded to the historical context. I think when you put in the Killing Eve thing, it moved me a little bit into the sort of tone. I was thinking of The Crown, but not The Crown, but that a more of a sort of going through time and history. And once you brought in a few of the comps, that was an excellent way to sort of move me out of this sort of timeline part of it and into the actual entertainment of it all, I guess. Because you said it was a historical pilot, which I think makes sense but is it historical fiction? No, it's true history.
True.
So it's not Shogun historical fiction, sort of, right? So I think that's important. I wonder if there wasn't something more I'm not a writer, but something more in the words of historical biography or something to let me understand that obviously you went on the tour and it was this real person, but over the course of listening to you, I might have lost a little bit of track because I was so engaged with richness and the detail and the personalities and all of that. But I mean, if somebody pinned me down and said, find something to say about this pitch, but honestly, it was lovely. And it sounds like a great project.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, everybody. I'm very moved and grateful to have your attention and time to tell it.
Yes, you were amazing. Loved it. I think going off of what Rachel said about always bringing it back to the true, you can always just throw in words like, and the crazy thing about this true moment that happened, this true event, it's just kind of easy way to kind of bring it back into that these are all these points or these big set pieces are true things that happened. You can always just kind of like pull that nugget back in there. But you did an amazing job. I would watch the show. So
thank you.
All right. Next up, we have a video pitch because Miss Justine Rivero is living in London and it would be very late for her to do her pitch. So she sent us in a video. We're going to pull that up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Justine Rivero, and I write sci-fi fantasy stories about women of color who are outsiders making their way in strange worlds. I was born in the Philippines, raised in California, and now living in London. And I felt like an outsider for most of my life. From being a first-generation immigrant to being an undercover journalist to working in tech for almost 15 years, often as the only woman of color on my team. Now, I found that in order to belong, I had to build my own worlds. So that's why I write stories about finding your inner voice and power amongst alien, strange lands. And that's why the women I write are often necromancers, badass warriors, or even demons, because I found that the fantastical, absurd, and often dark elements of sci-fi and fantasy can really capture the surreal experience of being part of a marginalized group in America. So huge thanks to the ISA team for giving me somewhere to belong to. And thank you to all the panelists for your feedback today. I'm excited to join you, although asynchronously, and share more about Good Bones, my 1-hour TV fantasy pilot. Last year, I went to Buenos Aires and toured the world's most beautiful cemetery. Now, the stories I heard there about the people who lived and died, it just made my imagination go wild. And I wondered, what if the dead were just like us, had the same regrets and grudges and hopes that we do? And also growing up Filipino, our dead ancestors are sort of part of everyday life. Like, see that brown butterfly? That's your grandpa. And smell candles when there's none around? That must be grandma. So I imagine this world where the dead were just as messy as the living. This is Good Bones. Good Bones is a 1-hour show that follows Chia, a necromancer for hire who helps the dead with their unfinished business so their souls can move on. But for a fee, of course, because Chia's not your average ghost whisperer. Imagine Cookie Lion from Empire. That's Chia. Brave, brash, fierce, and flirts with moral gray areas like it's buying her free drinks. Now, Chia feels alienated from both the worlds of the living and the dead, so she's sort of a nomad and avoids human connection, even to her own family. But one day, the only person who really understood Chia, her grandma, becomes a desperate ghost, trapped on Earth until she completes her unfinished business. So Chia has no choice but to go to vibrant, haunted New Orleans to dig up her grandma's mysterious past and try to save her soul. But she also needs help and reluctantly teams up with folks from the local cemetery, including a wholesome cemetery real estate agent, real job by the way, and a Grim Reaper in training. Slowly, Chia starts to build roots and relationships, even to her own family history. And she starts to think that life may be more about living than just waiting to die. But then, an undead serial killer emerges, terrifying New Orleans and surfacing buried secrets about Grandma and the cemetery. So in a world where the dead reckon with their biggest fears and regrets, Chia must face her own genuine human connection if she's going to save her grandma's soul, the cemetery, and the whole city. Welcome to the world of Good Bones, where the dead come to play and the living come to die. Thank you so much.
I'm going to let Felicity go first because we worked with Justine during Fast Track Week and we know this project well.
I guess as well, we kind of talked about this before with the other, I know that we got to the fact that it was a TV series and it was called Good Bones and it was a pilot, but I still think, unfortunately, when you, I mean, I know this project and when it's not set up for you, like you are being spoon-fed some mashed apple at the beginning, it kind of, you spend time not listening, trying to work out what is happening. So not to make it all very, very boring and the same, but I just think it's just, there are certain things that just, if you kind of package it with it, just so that we know. I like the fact that you mentioned Good Bones again, so we kind of got the name of it. So it's quite good, I think, to mention the name of your piece, especially because it kind of ties into the quality of the work she's talking about. I mean, about bones, you know what I mean, cemeteries and ghosts. So it's a good title. I must admit, I found, to be honest with you, I love Justine, but I found it a tiny bit confusing to kind of hang on to what was going to be the engine of each episode. And I think that's what I was kind of missing. I kind of understood the world that was built and I understood what she was going through, her lack of intimacy and her fear of that, and that she had to find her grandma, but that grandma's death didn't quite land for me. But she's so charming. And the fact that, you know, her kind of personal story as she sets it up about feeling as an outsider, and then, you know, it does feel she's very qualified to write this story. I just kind of think maybe we needed less and a bit more of a kind of a targeted through line.
Paul, what about you? If you wanted to give feedback to Justine, what would you say?
I enjoyed the piece, but it didn't quite grasp me as hard as I thought that it would do at the beginning. It was very, it set a tone, and those are tropes that I enjoy, but I think the question that I had was, and then I didn't know where while there was the consequence of her grandmother, I didn't feel like how would it be sustained time and time again. And it just, I thought it was entertaining, but it didn't grasp me as strongly as I thought that I wanted it to from the beginning.
And what do you think she could have done or can do when she revamps the pitch to make it work better? Does she need to say in every episode this happens, or she's solving a different murder, or what?
If you're going to make it procedural, and yes, I think that's like a season where, you know, each story or each week, every one of them is not necessarily connected to the one before. But if you want to run, if she wanted to make it where maybe just to tie in her grandmother as like the B storyline, but as she's solving the other murders as the A storyline, just to have a constant thread throughout, so that there's another story arc to keep it going, that would be good. But I think, I don't know if procedurally, like each week would be enough I wouldn't necessarily by week 8, I don't know how vested I would be.
Right. Okay. And Rachel.
For me anyway, it didn't feel new and fresh, right? So for a proper executive out there, I think that might be a problem. So it might be needing more research somehow to differentiate it amongst the other sort of afterlife things. But also I agree very much. It was, you know, if she was pitching the pilot, then it needed to be really clear that this is the first act, second act, third act, the end. This is the pilot, but this is season 1 and possibly season 2. These are the broader arcs. It felt a little bit claustrophobic, a little bit small to me. She touched on a lot of different areas, but I think, you know, it's funny because it could say you've seen or heard this kind of story frequently, and yet I don't think there's anyone out there on the air. Right. So, or recently, right? I'm not sure what comp I would even put it to, maybe something about vampires or something else. So, you know, then the question is, something really has to be dramatically unique and hot and special, whether it's her voice as the creator, whether it's some really outrageous twist, you know, that wasn't evident in what she said. Yeah, I feel like in that case, obviously it's easy to say this because she's not on the phone, on the call. So, you know, but I think, yeah, I think it definitely has a lot of good pieces and stuff, but maybe it just needs more heavy development.
Yeah, it needs that.
It needs
that thing that makes it that she's doing this, but it's what's the thing that really like makes it different? Where's that new element that we haven't seen for a ghost whisperer type person, I think. Yeah. Okay. Well, last up we have Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
All of you. I mean, this is the antithesis of me getting out of my comfort zone. Because yeah, my name is Stephanie. I actually work as a film and television editor. So I spend my time in a room, not in front of other people. During the time I was working my way up into the editor's chair as an assistant, an opportunity came along for me to play women's tackle football. And growing up in Texas and being a Dallas Cowboys fan, I love playing football with my brothers, but as a girl, playing for a team wasn't an option. So I essentially pitched a Hail Mary and jumped at the chance without hesitation to move to Daytona Beach, Florida to play tackle football. And I ended up playing for 10 years, where during that time I met many incredible women, not only in this country, but across the world. And so Hail Mary follows a fictional Maria Lombardo, who is the second highest ranking woman in NFL history, who feels or faces immense pressure from her career and family. And she's criticized by sports talk radio, and she's battling the good old boys club. So she resigns following the sudden death of her father and retreats to Georgia. Her husband, Nick, who's a struggling reality television producer and who's about to lose his job, sees potential, well, not only potential in women's tackle football, but also a lifeline. And despite her initial reluctance, Miriam joins the venture with Nick, during which they encounter Camilla, the would-be quarterback with a past, and Mike, a single dad who's aspiring to be a football coach, a head football coach. And together they aim to build a groundbreaking women's tackle football team. Now, Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Do not follow where the path may lead. Go instead to where there is no path and leave a trail." So Miriam embraces her role as a trailblazer in a sport where many women dream to follow. So Hail Mary captures the struggle, the dreams, the determination of women breaking new ground in tackle football, all while becoming what seemed unlikely, a chosen family. And I ask that you join Miriam, Nick, and their team as they face challenges form unbreakable bonds and redefine what it means to follow your dreams.
Good job, Stephanie. I'm going to go to Rachel first this time.
Excellent job. That's a really, that is a unique topic, obviously women playing football. So I think it's excellent that you gave your personal, you gave your personal backstory first, because yeah, that really, made me look at you as this unique voice and this unique person, even if you're, like you said, your day job is editing and this and that, this may not be your normal environment. I think that was, I don't know if the others would agree with me, but that really resonated with me to know that this was really something that you lived. I think, so it's, I seem to have missed the part. It's a series. Are you pitching the pilot? Are you pitching the entire series?
Yes, this is I'm pitching the pilot and sort of touching on what the series as a whole would be about.
Okay. So I think again, that might just be me looking on Zoom, not honing in on that, but I would say that it's definitely important to make sure, I probably said this now like the third time, but I think it's really important, at least for me, to really differentiate this pitch that you're doing now in the moment, this half hour in the room with this executive. You are pitching the pilot and that story and that arc, and then how that relates down the road to the rest of your season, the other characters, who enters into it, all the rest of it. Somehow, for me, that really puts a context around what I'm listening to. I think you did a great job. I think I would also say that practicing a pitch that's unique and distinct, and again, if you're not normally in front of a room or something like that, practicing with, maybe even also with actors or people who are constantly in front of other people, would probably be really helpful too, before going into that room and desk of executives, which is daunting in itself. I think you did a great job.
Awesome, thank you. Paul, I will go to you.
Hey there, what position did you play?
I was a defensive back, primarily free safety.
Free safety. So when you saw that wideout coming, did you think that you could take her?
The wideouts, yeah, the running backs were a little big though.
But when you lined up and the ball was snapped, you thought that you knew that you could take her. Okay. Yeah. When you pitch, you have a wideout across the room for you. Have that confidence, because I would watch it. I would watch it because it's like, it reminds me of like Winning Time. I worked on Survivor's Remorse, and it just put me right back to that. And it's a great story. Great story. And someone in the chat put with the upsurgence in the WNBA and women's sports. I mean, you make the stories compelling. Like, check out Heels. I mean, that's the story. It's not to say that that's a niche sport, but it is a niche sport, but something that people don't know about. And so why not give them what they don't know about from someone who's lived it? Great. I would watch it in a heartbeat.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we will round it out with Felicity.
Yeah, really great job, Stephanie. I think, when Paul talked at the beginning about passion and being the person to tell the story, oh my goodness, you came with all of that. And that, even though I think you would agree that the pitch needs some work, just because for your own confidence, it doesn't matter. It shows you that it doesn't need to be perfect. I think sometimes people are so great, they're all like, perfect, but then they don't have the substance. They don't mean it. You definitely meant it. And also, just by acknowledging that, you're an editor and this is not your comfort zone, we all go like, okay, I'm not expecting this to be perfect. And that's okay too. You're allowed to be a human being. We're all human beings, hopefully trying to get along. And the fact then you can talk so knowledgeably about it, then made me interested again, something I know nothing about. I'm from the UK, so like this, it's like about the other side of the moon from where I am. I've read this script, so I know that there's the bit about they're going to turn it into a reality TV show. I don't know if that landed. I don't know if that's important or not, but I just, you know, that they were going to film it and follow it. I know it's definitely part of the show because I've read it. But I think what this meeting would do is it would get people, they would be running upstairs to their executive, to their bosses ahead of them and going like, we've got this amazing show. She's brilliant. She's done it. You know what I mean? We just need to work on what it's actually what it's going to look like and how we can work. And, you know, but you have to hear the story. And in the meantime, you'd want to work hard with someone to really break down what they're going to see. It reminded me of a bit of a kind of a modern Friday Night Lights, you know what I mean, but with grown-ups rather than kids. And they tell you what, they're looking for another one of that, and the lead being a female rather than a dude, you know what I mean? And it's all that freshness, that otherness, and second chances. You know, you deal with second chances and helping people find out who they are and making them, and that team sport and finding found family. And you kind of went quiet and into yourself at the end, whereas actually I think you should be proud of what you're suggesting and the family that you're building on this screen, and that you are part of that family and that you thought of it and that you're the expert in this area talking about your work, because you are.
Thank you. Thank you all.
If it would help, hold the ball in your hand, like just like channel that during the pitch. I mean, it's a prop and it works. And if it helps you channel, you know, that inner, yeah, do that.
That's a great idea, actually.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's really smart. Love it. Okay, it is 6:06. We are going to wrap up this this pitch panel. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for our pitchers for being brave and putting yourself out there in front of an audience. It's really difficult when you're even talking to one person. So, I mean, massive kudos to you for that. And also thank you to Rachel and Paul and Felicity for being here tonight and taking your time to talk about pitching, to hear these pitches, and to give your feedback. We appreciate it immensely. We will do this again. Obviously, we do these, you know, as the year goes on. So see you all next time.